let us set the stage for the next plenary session, which is a plenary session 3, Financing the Future. Let me introduce our moderator for the session, Mr. Kim Schumacher, lecturer in Sustainable Finance and ESG, Tokyo Institute of Technology, to guide us through the session.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session on financing the future. Finance as a key pillar to enable sustainable transformations. And this is an extremely important session. As we heard with the previous sessions, sustainable transformations are challenging. And one of the most important part is to provide adequate financing in order to make these projects or transform them into reality. And it is my pleasure today to get a little bit of a taste of that, what is happening in this field from our esteemed panelists today. I would like to start with our first panelist, Akihiro Fukutome. He's the Senior Managing Executive Officer and the co-head of the Global Banking Unit at Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. Then the second speaker for today is Danielle Baron. She's the Global Head of Structured Finance at Crédit Agricole CIB, which is the investment branch of Crédit Agricole Group. Then our third speaker today is Masato Miyachi. He's a member of the Board of Directors and the Deputy President of MUFG Banking Group. And then finally, we have Nobumitsu Hayashi. He's the Deputy Governor at the Japan Bank for International Cooperation. Thank you very much for being here today, and it is a pleasure to have you on the panel.
Thank you very much.
So as the first presentation, I would like to invite Fukutome-san to give a presentation, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Schumacher-san. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akihiro Fukutome from Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation. Thank you for kindly inviting me to this panel about financing the future. This is such a timely topic because the whole world is closely following COP26. And speaking of COP, I would also like to take this opportunity to express my admiration for France's successful hosting of COP21, which led to the historical Paris Agreement. France's leadership in fighting climate change has been an inspiration, indeed. Before I begin, let me say a few words about my background. For more than 3 years, I was the president of Toyota Financial Service and worked for Toyota Motor Corporation as a managing officer. I say this because it was a great experience to be part of the manufacturer that is so focused on a green future. This is at the center of their business and culture, and I rode in the Toyota Mirai in several business occasions, and I was very impressed. Not only is it hydrogen powered, but it is also comfortable to ride in, really fun to drive. So I hope you will all have the chance to try it. After returning to SMBC this April, what I learned at Toyota has helped me in my new role to promote sustainability in our bank's global business. So I am excited to be here today and discuss this important topic. Let me start by introducing our organization's principles and initiatives that guide our business. SMBC Group is dedicated to ESG governance. We have put in our mission statement that we contribute to a sustainable society by addressing environment and social issues. Furthermore, we announced a 10-year plan called SMBC Group Green Globe 2030. This plan sets out the KPIs for achieving our sustainability goals. Meanwhile, as we all know, society has been accelerating its push to be carbon neutral. The Japanese government has declared carbon neutrality by 2050, and the US has rejoined the Paris Agreement. SMBC Group has recognized the importance of these goals, and we have officially committed to achieving net zero emissions in our investment and lending portfolio by 2050. We have also joined the Net Zero Banking Alliance. By participating in this and other global initiatives, we will accelerate the achievement of our targets and take part in discussions of climate change issues. To turn these ambitions into result, we have set a target of 30 trillion yen in sustainable finance by the year 2030. A big part will be continuing to leverage our strengths in project finance. In this area, we have been awarded Global Bank of the Year 6 consecutive years. We have also doubled our disbursement in renewable energy project in the last 2 years. There are many other dimensions of our ESG and sustainability efforts. For example, this year we launched Green Deposit. Next slide, please. Of the SMBC Group's many initiatives, I'd like to talk about one we are particularly focused on, realizing a hydrogen energy society. To provide a solution and grow with our customers, we believe we should directly take part in promoting this innovation. So, we became the first financial institution to join the Hydrogen Council. We also set up with Toyota and Sumitomo Corporation a hydrogen utilization study group. This group aimed to create demand and supply chain for hydrogen in the Tube region. And we led the establishment of the Japan Hydrogen Association. We are one of the 3 co-chairs, along with Toyota and Iwanami, and active in the financial working group. This group studies the challenges and makes policy recommendations about financing hydrogen energy. We have a good record of financing hydrogen projects. In fact, we are excited and proud to be part of the world's first ever non-recourse financing for green hydrogen. The CEOG is a power plant combining solar energy generation with hydrogen storage and lithium-ion battery in French Guiana. French Guiana is heavily dependent on thermal power. So, this project reduces the use of fossil fuels and will also provide stable output to the country's grid, which is less developed in remote regions. And CEOZ is fuel-free, noise-free, and produces no harmful gas emissions. SMBC was pleased to collaborate with French financial institutions in providing the finance for this project. Next slide, please. I would also like to touch on our initiatives in our business in Europe and France. Europe is highly advanced in and highly values ESG. Our bank has put in place a strategy specific to this region, and we have enhanced our capability to support our customers with sustainable finance experts. Let me also mention that our support for our customers' transition is not limited to energy projects. For example, through a sustainability-linked loan, an instrument which links borrowing terms to the achievement of KPIs. We have assisted the developer Unibail-Rodamco Westfield. The KPIs were structured around one main target to reduce the group's carbon emissions across its value chain. In addition, to provide finance, we were also a co-ESG coordinator advising on items such as the setting of the KPIs. Next slide, please. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to mention that we have a specialized department to support French and other global companies in Japan. Our professionals are experienced in global business, and with our rich base of Japanese clients, we can also introduce business partners. Our track record of providing finance and other support to our customers includes future-oriented business areas. To name a few: hydrogen, solar, biomass, and plastic bottle recycling. This concludes my presentation today. We at SMBC Group will remain committed to working with our stakeholders of a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fukutome-san. And after this presentation, learning a little bit more SMBC's activities, next we will jump continents over to France, where we have Danielle BARON as the next present.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'm joining you from Paris. This is obviously a topic very close to our hearts. What role can we as an institution, what role can finance play in a sustainable future? Clearly this week in Scotland, our eyes are turned to Glasgow. The Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero announced 130 trillion of capital engagements from financial institutions for the energy transition. So let's say we're being conservative and you don't believe in the 130 trillion. Let's say you believe in half that number. The availability of and the need for private capital as a catalyst to the transition is simply staggering and to my mind, fairly obvious. The challenge of climate change will impact everything our clients do, regardless of which industries we find ourselves in, which client a bank finds itself supporting. And we need to be ready to manage that change. So I personally believe that there are many ways in which the financial services industry can be a positive force for change that we need to see in our environment. So I thought I might highlight some of the ways in which we feel we can actually enact that change in support of our clients and support of our communities. The first is capital investment and investment discipline. Banks are currently signing up to enormous figures to provide essential and positive support to the energy transition. The transition cannot be financed with public money alone, hence the Global Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Energy transition infrastructure that is developed under viable and financeable business models will in fact be infrastructure that is built to last and to provide value for our communities. So I genuinely believe that banks and financial institutions have a role to play in ensuring that that capital is allocated to viable green energy transition infrastructure. The second role I think that we have, and a second opportunity, which I think sometimes gets lost in the very real challenge of the energy transition, is an opportunity for growth. There is a great deal to be pessimistic about in terms of the client emergency, but I don't think the ability to invest and create economic opportunity through transition investments and growth is one of the problems. I think it's actually one of the opportunities for us. You often hear sentiments along the line that the transition is going to be very expensive. That's true. Capital expenditure and sustaining an energy system has always been expensive, and transforming it will also be expensive. But let's not lose sight of the fact that the technologies exist to get us to net zero. My colleague from SMBC just mentioned hydrogen, clearly renewable energy also, and the costs of these technologies is being driven down by scale. So the more that SMBC, Crédit Agricole, MUFG invest in these projects, the cheaper they're going to get, the more viable they become, and we become a big part of the solution to these problems. This growing investment will have a positive effect on our economies, growing new sectors, fostering new companies, and investing in a new economy. So financial institutions are at the heart of this phenomenon. We are the leverage that will make it happen faster, and we are the leverage that will make it bigger. So clearly, equity investors also have their role to play, and they are raising billions in capital to create new energy clients. And we are clearly seeking to support those clients in those investments, which brings me to my third point of where financial investors, how we can contribute to a sustainable future, and that is really by accompanying our clients in their transition. Whether it's structuring a green bond or helping a client enter a new renewable energy market, financial institutions can help their clients transform their businesses. We have several energy clients beginning on this journey, and we have proudly been the financial advisor to companies such as Shell or Total as they make their first green investments. So we have a clear role to play with the expertise that we have, with the global footprint we have. Crédit Agricole is active in the energy in power in 60 different countries, and that enables us to accompany different clients who have never entered those markets before with our expertise. So I think that's a key role that we have to play as well. And the last and final point I will make, which is perhaps the one that gets the most attention, is that financial institutions can shape the sustainable future by how they allocate their capital. So where these institutions choose to put their money will also be a significant driver of change. Crédit Agricole was the first bank to exit coal mines and coal-fired power plants back in 2015. We have also just undertaken to increase our exposure to low carbon energy by 60% by 2025, so in 4 years' time. These are anecdotes, and they're only part of a much larger program that we have, but I think they're a helpful illustration of how allocated capital that is much cheaper than equity, can drive change and can drive investment where we want it to be to achieve a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. That is very exciting to hear, the transformation and the transition of the finance sector itself. And having heard that the role of the finance sector, afterwards, some concrete examples and some concrete implementation, we will next hear from MIYACHI-san from MUFG Bank, some concrete examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. I'm Masato MIYACHI, Deputy President of the MUFG. Honored to be here. And I want to talk about the sustainability initiative by MUFG, but this is our French-Japanese summit. Before entering into the main theme, let me give you the quick overview of our bank's branch in Paris. Next, please. MUFG Bank has a long history in France. In fact, next year will be 140th anniversary of our first presence, when we opened up the Lyon office in 1882. Next, please. Our Paris branch is also one of the oldest of our overseas offices. It has the largest loan balance by country of all our branches on the European continent. Major customers, of course, include the Japanese companies doing business in France, but also French companies among the CAC 40 and listed on Euronext Paris. Next, please. MUFG conducted a lot of the business in Africa from our European and African offices in Paris and London, Johannesburg, Cairo. Our Paris branch covers 12 French-speaking countries in West Africa, including Morocco and Tunisia. We support the business venture of Japanese companies throughout Africa, mainly in collaboration with French entities. Given its history, scale, and customer relationships, including those on the African continent, our Paris branch is a key office in our organization. Next. Now to my main point, MUFG sustainability initiatives. As you can see here, in addition to low birth rates and an aging society in our home market of Japan, MUFG is dealing with global forces like low economic growth, perpetually low interest rate, the impact of COVID-19, and shift to digital technologies in nearly every aspect of our lives. Our operating environment is changing far faster than ever before in our 350-year entity history. Next, please. With these macro trends as a backdrop, MUFG began drawing up our next 3-year plan last autumn and launched it in this fiscal year. One of its 3 strategy pillars is corporate transformation, which includes the digital transformation and the need to transform our corporate culture. Along with these important themes, another major focus of our plan is to address environmental and social issues. Next, please. This circle represents the 10 major issues we identified as the strategic priorities. I'll focus quickly on just one: how MUFG intend to help society become more sustainable by addressing climate change and other environmental concerns. Next. By the way, responding to climate change is nothing new for our management. As you can see, we have been engaged in related policies and initiatives since 2005. Next. More recently, in May, we released our carbon neutrality declaration, committing to net zero emission of greenhouse gases across our lending and investment portfolio. This was the first among Japanese banks and will guide us as we scale up our climate-related initiatives. We are also playing an active role in global initiatives that address climate change. For example, we were the first Japanese bank to join the Net Zero Banking Alliance convened by the UN, United Nations. Next. Here are also some examples of sustainable financing at MUFG. The table on the left ranks performance last year in global sustainable financing, mainly syndicated loans. French and Japanese financial institutions are at the top of the league table as a reflection of our active commitment. The table on the right shows our rank in global ESG bond. Considering the importance of ESG-related projects, there's still room for growth in this area, and we are sure to see more actively. Next, please. Here are some of our efforts to support strategy and innovation to help society transition to sustainable models. MUFG has been active in renewable energy projects shown on the left. We intended to keep working towards the goal of carbon neutrality, and we will provide support, including the research and development stage, for various technological and business innovations to help society achieve net zero emissions. Next, please. The 2 cases as the slide are example of how we support innovative technologies. Next, please. And these are examples of recent activity in impact investing and initiative by MUFG Bank and Mitsubishi UFJ Trust and Banking. We will keep engaging in these types of activities to help develop sustainable businesses. Next, please. Finally, here are some examples of activities with social impact, the S in ESG finance. The top item concerns the financing we extended to Agricole Bank. It was cited in the African Banker Award 2021 for Deal of the Year in the debt category, a first for Japanese financial institutions. Next, please. And this slide described as our involvement with social loans for Africa. We intend to deepen collaboration with international development banks and other organizations to help address social challenges in the emerging economy of Africa or elsewhere. France will continue to be gateway for MUFG to contribute to our effort throughout Africa. Next, please. Let me close with a question. What exactly is sustainability in business? The answer keeps evolving, and our efforts have to evolve with it. As the concept of sustainability expands, the MUFG needs to engage with our customers on a deep level to understand and support their own transitions. This is what we do as a bank: understand and support. And I mentioned earlier, next year MUFG will elaborate the 140 years of offering this kind of support in France. As a Japanese bank with the longest and deepest ties to France, we will keep working to contribute to the success of the business in both our countries. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miyachi-san. And after hearing from the private side of the financial sector, now we move a little bit, we expand a little bit into infrastructure finance and the actors in that space. So next, let us welcome Hayashi-san from the Japan Bank for International Cooperation to hear a little bit about that side. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Schumacher-san. I want to talk about who we are and what we do. I hope the audience knows JBIC, but for those of you who are unfortunate enough not to know us, let me tell you that we are 100% government-owned financial institution that support Japanese business abroad. As such, the national interest in Japanese companies' profits and employment are very important, but in a very new fourth medium-term business plan that started this fiscal year, we are to address global issues toward realizing sustainable development for the global economy and society. And our first action plan is to work for decarbonization. And last month, we made public our ESG policy, which happened to coincide with the meeting in Glasgow. Well, our climate change policy is, quite similar to those announced by SMBC or MUFG, and we are aligning with the international goals to achieve the objective of the Paris Agreement and committed to pursuing ambitious and accelerated efforts to reduce our operational emissions to net zero by 2030 and to achieve net zero emissions in its finance portfolio by 2050. We will at the same time strengthen our climate change-related finance by supporting green innovation and accelerate energy transition, especially in Asia. Now, let me give you some of the examples from our activities and show you how ambitious we are trying to be. This slide shows our support to the project finance in solar photovoltaic project in Qatar, which is sponsored by French Total and Marubeni Corporation. This is the first large-scale solar panel power generation in Qatar. Well, as you know, Qatar is the gas country, and JBIC has been supporting Japanese companies develop LNG projects since the 1990s. And LNG is still a very important source of energy in the energy transitions in Asia, and also as a source of blue hydrogen in the future. And many gas-rich and oil-rich countries are undertaking a plethora of blue and green hydrogen and ammonia project, which many Japanese companies are very much interested in. And based on the strong relationship we have from LNG and renewable energy, we will support such hydrogen projects. The next slide shows our project finance that we supported in Moray East offshore wind power in the United Kingdom in November 2018, which is sponsored by ENGIE and Mitsubishi Corporation and Kansai Electric Power Company. The wind turbine comes from MHI Vestas, and one of the off-taker was ENGIE's affiliate in UK, IPM Energy Trading. Well, we know Europe is most advanced country in offshore wind power or renewable energy. But now the market doesn't seem quite stable or resilient. I see some gap between the ambition to be 100% green and the reality of dependence on the pipeline gas that comes in from the coal. But Japanese companies would dare to get in these most competitive and most advanced market with their own technology and know-how, and would like to replicate it in other parts of the world. And French companies will be a very strong partner in Europe as well in other areas. My last slide shows our equity investment in a startup company called First Element Fuel in California, US, that constructs and operates hydrogen stations. Well, it was in June 2020, under the reign of President Trump, king of fossil fuel, but the blue state, California, wanted to be very green and promoted zero-emission cars and had its own unique regulations and subsidies. And now the most advanced hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles market. JBIC not only lends, but has a mission to make equity investment. And in this newer technology, newer energy of hydrogen, we thought we should be making an equity investment. As you see on the slide, Toyota and Honda are in it, as well as Air Liquide, a French frontrunner in hydrogen, and Mitsui, who wants to be a global leader in hydrogen partner. And now, very recently, MUFG is also in the project. We are not sure how far the American administration would keep the green ambition after the midterm election or beyond, but I'm sure that the US states on the coast will continue to invest in renewable energy and hydrogen business. And JBIC is quite ready to play a role along with Japanese banks and French companies and Japanese companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hayashi-san. And after having this really great display of different projects and different approaches, different policies, I would like to ask some questions. And before I turn to our fine gentleman here, I would like to ask the first question to Danielle Baron in Paris. You mentioned especially COP26 and Glasgow and the ambitions at COP26. And one of the questions that I want, with all these announcements, all these pledges that have been made, what is, in your opinion, a good way to measure all that impact from sustainable finance and ESG investment project? How can we measure the impact, and how can we sort of track the tangible impact that it generates also for both investors and for a broader stakeholder community?
You've started with the hardest question. I've always been a fan of the old adage, what gets measured gets managed. It's very difficult to claim or to justify your policies unless you have some sort of hard principles to back that up. That having been said, the problem banks are currently facing with their portfolios and the greening of their portfolios is indeed the measurement itself. I mean, banks, large banks such as the ones you have on the panel today, are representative of the entire global economy. We have thousands of clients, and our ability to measure how green our balance sheet is contingent upon being able to measure excuse me, the carbon footprint of those thousands of clients. So the first problem or the first challenge for us is how are those clients themselves measuring their carbon footprint, and how are they reporting on that carbon footprint? Otherwise, we are ending up having to make rules that are by design very imperfect, and by design relying on data that is not very accurate. So this is a challenge I think that all the banks are facing. This is why all of us who have signed up for the Net Zero Banking Alliance for 2050 our goal is that by next year, we'll be able to come up with a reasonable approximation of the carbon intensity of our balance sheet. But it is a very laborious process for this very reason. Like I said, we have thousands of clients, and it's very difficult to measure what each client is up to in terms of carbon footprint. At Crédit Agricole, we're trying to be as pragmatic as possible, recognizing that perfection in this is perfection is not possible. 2, this is going to take time. 3, even whatever we come up with by next year, it's going to evolve. So even though we recognize that we're under a lot of scrutiny, that we have the honestly the heartfelt desire to do the right thing and to do this properly, this is going to change over time. Not least because you're also going to have different taxonomies in different geographies. So the EU is coming up with its own taxonomy in different countries and different regulatory environments. So this will be imperfect. Which doesn't mean that we can sit on our hands and not do anything. And so at Crédit Agricole, we are coming up with sectorial policies. We figured this was the least bad option, or perhaps the most accurate way to proceed, at least in the near term. So, for example, our shipping business has the Poseidon Principles, which allows us, in fact, to start measuring the carbon footprint of our different shipping clients and therefore set policies in accordance with that. We are rolling out in our aircraft division a carbon calculator for the same purposes. So again, it's breaking down our portfolio into sectors, assessing what the carbon intensity is of those sectors and those clients, and then developing policies for them. So that's where we are in this journey.
Sounds like a very daunting and complex task, but what Danielle said, this entire range of projects, this spectrum of projects, and she mentioned the taxonomy. So basically, different jurisdictions are now working on classification systems for, green projects, sustainable projects. So my next question, first to Miyachi-san and then to Hayashi-san, I just want to hear, do you think such a classification system can make sense? And if not, what would be a good alternative to still capture some of the projects that might sometimes still provide benefits without necessarily falling into these narrow classification categories?
Okay, classifying the project as a green or not, it may be beneficial just for the investor as one of the benchmark of the making an investment decision. But however, there are differences between the country and regions in their, say, the economic circumstances. So that's the reason why just a question for classification, the green or not, may delay the arrival of net zero emission of the society, I think. So let me see, say, currently taxonomy, you said, and the development of the pathway and the sector roadmap, such kind of discussion has been a lot of thing in all the world. But being considered just as a national basis and also regional basis, I believe that it should be essential for these frameworks to be recognized on the global basis and to improve them so that they become mutually compatible. Pursuing the net zero emission target, it is important to act quickly while sharing knowledge and resources on a global basis. That key word, I think, how to make it global basis and consensus building.
Thank you very much. And next, Hayashi-san, what would be your take from a little bit of different angle as a development finance from a...
Well, I could say I agree with Miyachi-san and stop here, but I might add that we are much more sophisticated than just say whether it's green or not. I know that the French people are not in agreement whether nuclear energy is green or not with the French people. So there can be discussion on biomass to energy or on waste to energy, whether how green they are. And also on the use of hydrogen. There are many, many ways of manufacturing and storing hydrogen. So many variations can be given a chance. And each country striving to decarbonize should be able to do that in a workable but steady and accelerated manner according to its resources and endowment. And our task would be to better gauge the whole supply chains, greenhouse gas and methane and other environment degrading gases. So there should be a much more variety than just green. I know that there are 82 valuations of green in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then just as a final comment, because we're running out of time, but I want to hear from Fukutome-san at the end, with COP26 now already in its second week, and having seen all these ambitions, can you give us some hope with the projects that, for example, SMBC has in the pipeline? Can you outline a little bit what is in store for the near future?
Thank you, Kim-san. Yes, in addition to solar power or hydrogen, in my presentation or Hayashi-san's beautiful presentation from JBIC, let me highlight also the wind power. So actually, we are pleased to participate in the finance of the first ever offshore wind farms in operation in France. Not in the UK, as I mentioned, this is French one. So as we all know, wind power plays a big role in society's transformation to renewable energy. Also for France, because they have a multi-year strategy to target net zero emission by 2050 and 32% renewable energy in energy mix in maybe 2030. I think the same holds for Japan, because Japan is a typical maritime country surrounded by sea. So I hope, we believe, by leveraging the experience or knowledge we get from those projects in advance, we can contribute to coming offshore wind project in Japan to support our client or to help the government achieve their own energy mix in the future. Okay.
Thank you very much. So with that note and seeing a little bit into the area of wind power, I think the conclusion of today's of this panel would be COP26 has defined the ambition. Financial institutions are responsible or have an obligation or also the challenge of implementing it, because the financial sector has a role. And then at the end, from also what Danielle said, it is important that we do measure and that we actually verify if that impact is actually happening or not. So I think with that takeaway, I think we will conclude this panel, and I will thank you again, the panelists, for participating, and for the Chamber of Commerce of France to inviting all of us. Thank you very much again, and please do give a round of applause to the panelists.
And thank you for moderating the session, Mr. Schumacher.